All right, welcome, Jessica Weston. I am so excited that you are here. This is just such an honor. Um, you are just, always kind of had you in the back of my mind as someone that is an inspiration to me, that because of all that you do, all that you've created, and that you have been making it work in a small ish town, and that you have been a business owner for a long time. And not only do you have a cafe, you are the chef at the cafe. You are an author, which is something I would just absolutely love to be myself. And that you are a coach and you are a teacher, that you do all of these things. And I can't wait to dig into it and just talk about how you do it all. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always so interesting to hear how other people see you in the world and to be
So true.
introduced, whether it's like to a friend at the grocery store or a potluck or in a space like this. So
Yeah. Oh
thank
gosh, I
you.
think
Because
you're
sometimes you
amazing.
get in your own head, right? You get in your own way, and I'm like, oh, am I really doing enough? Like, I'm not getting
Yeah.
everything I want to do done. We're so critical.
We're so critical, and I find that that happens in large part because of the who we're following or who we're inspired by, and we're like, "Whoa, they've they've done these big things and I'm not there yet," or, a lot of it can come down to comparing.
Yeah,
But
sometimes. Yeah,
yeah, what were you gonna say?
definitely. It's definitely a component.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's just so
Well,
much I wanna do, right?
totally, totally, and it's like, "Okay, I'm ready to do it." Well,
Mhm.
I want to talk about all of that, and I wanna begin with like, the way I kind of think about you is that you are wearing all these hats, right? Like, there's all these things that you do, and you are managing not only a business, you're managing people, and you're managing personalities, and you're managing things in all different seasons, and you're managing a cafe in a town and all of the other aspects that go along with that, and coaching and all of the stuff. But what I see at the core of it, and I think that's kind of where you were going when you were just talking a moment ago, is that there is something that weaves it all together that makes it possible for you to do this. And what I understand is that you have this connection or this trust within a greater force that makes it possible for you to not only wear all the hats, but be able to carry the vision and do the work that you need to do every day. And that's where I would really like to begin our conversation and to dig into just like, did you have a relationship? I'm going to say like a spiritual relationship. If you want to call it something else, that's totally fine. But did you have a relationship from like young, when you were a young child? Was that something that you discovered and you deepened through your work? Like, where did it begin? What's the story there?
Oh, that's interesting. I don't know if I've ever thought of that question in that way. I mean, I was raised very loosely Catholic, but, like, I never got confirmed because I thought it was, I saw all of my friends getting confirmed so they could get the checks and the new cars and stuff, and I was like, "Well, that feels like more of a sin to get confirmed in something I don't 100% believe in,
Mhm.
um, than, just especially for, like, something that vain. So but it always, like it's interesting because that background has kind of woven back in now that I've, like, been diving deeper in spiritual practices. So, um, yeah, like, we went to church, but it wasn't like my dad never really went except for Christmas and Easter.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then, started doing yoga in high school. About, like, 45 minutes away was this amazing studio. We would, like, drive out, my parents and I, and that was incredible, and that kind of I feel like that definitely took me deeper, but even as a kid, like, I was just always in tune with the nature, like natural
Mhm.
rhythms, and the natural world, and now I see how kind of all of that has woven in, and when I got to college, I was just super fascinated with religious studies and even still, like, really interested in archaeology of the Bible and Buddhist monks. There was, like, this whole monastery temple that you could go and do meditations at. And I was in Ithaca, New York, which is basically like a huge hippie mecca of all the things and many different religious studies and approaches. Um, and I always kind of considered myself like a believer in something greater than we are, but also that we are it and we are all one.
Wow. So did you
and it's gotten way deeper as I was in college. It was getting deeper. I mean, I was meditating, I was going to yoga, um, and then moved to Belize, and then here in Vermont, like all of it's just kind of dove deeper and deeper and peeling back all the layers.
God, I just love that so much, and thank you for sharing that, and what I love is that, like, it's like you've been who you are this whole time, right? Like, and the spark didn't go out when you were a kid, which can often happen, and then we have to, like, unlearn and relearn who we are. So there was, like, an element that was just you throughout that whole journey, and
Yeah,
how incredible.
it's really interesting. There was I did this group, it was called People to People, and we traveled to it was like high school students got like invited to go on these trips to different countries, and we did a British Isles trip one summer for like 21 days, and there were like 16 of us from all these different schools in two different counties. And I'm from Western New York, and when at the end we all like wrote in each other's notebooks because they like had us journal every day, which I've always been like a big like journaler, documenter. um and one of the girls wrote in it something about like you always go your own way, and like keep taking life by the horns or something like that. And I have to find it. I have it at my parents' house that still, I
Uh-huh.
think, and I'm just like, I need to like take that out and put it on the wall in front of me, in front of my
Yeah.
desk, because that's how I've always been. I've always like just done what I wanted to do, kind of gone my own way. um it's really, yeah, it's interesting.
Oh, I think that's awesome.
Yeah,
I think that's
I've
really
like embraced my inner weirdo. I was always like the, yeah.
who did you follow? Who were your, like, mentors, or who inspired you when you were younger?
Oh,
Curious.
I mean, I don't know if I had like a specific, like how I'm like, how young?
Yeah. Well, you know who
um,
comes to mind for me that was, like, very eye-opening for me as far as, like, go your own way,
mhm.
was Tori Amos. Like, I don't know
Mm,
how we're around the same age, but she was always somebody that was just like, "Whoa," like, so different from other
yeah.
kind of mainstream artists.
I'm not actually sure if it wasn't really until college that I was just super okay with like being who I was. And of course, I have like, there were always, there's like confidence things, or like, the things that come up in that
Yeah.
adolescent age era, but I was never wavering in who I wasn't gonna change myself. I would just kind of like dug into like, no, this is who I am. And I like this music that I'll download on my friends' Napsters. And then when I leave, they delete it all because they think it's weird
Mm.
or whatever it was. Like I just kind of always had my own style and my own whatever, like path. And I really love that. I have a piece hanging in my kitchen that was actually on my uncle's, those like cards at funerals that have like
Yeah.
sometimes like poems or quotes. And it's a Thoreau quote, which is interesting because like we're in like Thoreau country here in Vermont. And it's something of like, if a man doesn't keep step with his fellow, some, oh God, what is it? Um, it's something basically about going your own way and like following the
Yeah.
beat of your own drum. And that's
Mhm.
always, and then like my dad had it in his office, and I like stole it from him and put it in my college apartment. And it's not in my house still, in my kitchen. But yeah, just always going my own way. And I don't know if I had an inspiration at that point. And then when I got to college, there was one trip to Colorado that really was like this huge, profound thing, um, with actually someone who has inspired a lot of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
So
was like
this
a
per
family friend. So,
Mhm.
it's someone who my mom used to teach with in, Buffalo, and she moved to
Okay.
Colorado, like, she was in Colorado my whole, life, and, I always was like, "Oh, Molly's like the older me." We're different,
Yeah.
but, like,
Yeah.
I kind of always had this like soul connection with her, and I still do. And she's when I went to college, I have a lot of dietary restrictions. Like with So Super Fresh, my restaurant is all organic, vegan, gluten free, soy free. We're peanut free because it's such a big allergen in the allergen free, like world.
Mhm.
Um, but gluten, soy, dairy, eggs are like major ones for me, and I don't eat animal protein. Um, and that all started because I had really bad migraines from starting in 8th grade from my memory, and like many days a week, and nothing would change it. And when I went to college, I couldn't live with that anymore because I didn't have support of my family cooking dinners or laundry, or, you know, I was alone. I mean,
Mhm.
with friends and a new community, but I couldn't handle it. So I was really struggling with the migraines. And my mom was on the phone with Molly in Colorado. And she's like, I'm really worried about Jessie. She's struggling, la, 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 telling the story. And Molly's like, has she tried cutting out dairy? And I was already like in high school. I was like, kind of stopped eating red meat because I was like, I don't
Mhm.
eat red meat. I guess I don't eat red meat. There was no profound thing. I mean, like I kind of grew up on like no high fructose corn syrup, no hydrogenated oils. We often did like turkey bacon or things like that instead, or veggie burgers. I was the weird lunch kid with like fruit
Yeah.
leather that traded for nothing. No one wants fruit leather. I mean, I liked it, but I also
Yeah.
wanted the other crappy snacks.
I totally get it.
But yeah, so like Molly kind of set me down in that path and diet stuff. I cut out all dairy. And at that point, this was 2006. I was in college my freshman year, and everything basically I replaced with soy because I was eating some fish and chicken and
Yeah.
otherwise like pretty close to vegetarian. Um, and when I replaced it with soy, I plummeted into a deep depression, had all these thyroid issues and weight gain, and I was crying over my shadow for like, I knew no reason. I was like, I'm
Mm.
not depressed. Something's wrong with me. What's happening? And I
Yeah.
was like going to drop out of school and go like ski instruct in New Zealand or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
So I was
what
just
was
going to
going
chase the
through
snow.
yeah. S
um,
What was
I
going
don't
through your
even, I
mind?
was just really dark and I like wouldn't go to classes, but I would do the
Mhm.
work because I loved it. I like loved
Mm.
academia, and I had some friends I would hang out with, but otherwise I was like not super social, and I'm a very social person as much as I also love my solo time.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and I'm a very introverted extrovert.
Love it. Me
And
too. I'm right
and
there
it
with you.
really helps me so much. I have to have a really healthy balance of both. Um, and then my mom was on the phone with Molly again, and my mom was so worried about me because I just was not doing well. And Molly's like, "How much soy is she eating?" And as soon as
Wow.
I cut it out and I Googled it, and it's like thyroid issues, weight gain, all mood swings. I was like 18. I didn't need more phytoestrogens in my body.
Wow.
So
Oh, that's
actually, that
amazing.
spring after college, I went to Colorado and stayed with Molly for a couple weeks. And she had to work sometimes, and we'd go for hiking near Colorado Springs and Manitou Springs and all that. And um, I would just be at her house, like reading Shakti Gawain's Creative Visualization, and that's when I read Eat, Pray, Love, and a book on numerology. And I was just devouring all these really cool books in her home. And I still have like anytime I see Shakti Gawain's Creative Visualization, I'll grab a couple copies. I got a used bookstore or something. I'm like, someone's gonna need this,
Yeah, yeah,
and that
totally.
really opens the floodgates, really, for me of like diving deeper. Oh, and Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life.
Oh, I love that. You
So,
know what
like,
you're making me
all of
think
those
of?
things came to me in that, like, 1 week in Colorado after Molly had also inspired me to, like, cut out dairy and soy.
It's exactly how it happens, you know? It's
Yeah.
like just this moment in our life that can change everything. I'm reading this book right now called, I'm sure you read it. It's an old book, The 4 Agreements.
Yes, so good.
Yeah, I read it like years ago and I
I
just picked
have
it up
it right
again.
next to me.
Yeah, and it's coming to mind because there's this process of like kind of you're born so wild and free and knowing exactly who you are and what your path is in the world and what you're here to do. And then there's all these rules in our society and they get placed on you and your parents are just kind of going along with it, which but it sounds like your parents were kind of bucking the rules in some ways.
Yeah.
And you just kind of go through life understanding like what needs to happen of you. But it sounds to me like there was just this knowing that kind of stayed with you that you didn't
Mhm.
totally shed. And so it was easy to absorb the information when it came back into your life. And it made
Yes,
it
I
like
would say that's true, and it definitely helped having a very supportive family, even though still as like, my mother sometimes is like, "Wouldn't it be easier if you were just a school teacher?" You'd have summers off and vacations, and when you have kids, la la la, and I'm like, I am so grateful for school teachers, and that's not my path. And I
Oh my god,
know
that's so funny. That's exactly what I was encouraged to do as well. That's so funny.
yeah. I mean, it's what
Um,
my mom was, and I'm great. I love teaching, and I'm great with
yeah,
kids. Like, I do ski instruct, and I love teaching the kiddos. But that's not my soul path.
yeah.
I teach in
I
other
love
ways.
Yeah, same here. I love teaching adults.
Mhm.
Um, so will you walk me through so you had this journey, just kind of others really there was just a foundation that was built from when you were younger, and then it
Mhm.
just kind of there was a thread that carried you through. So then how did this come into your how does it come into your work life, into creating a business and
Yeah, and I guess
keeping the
one more
practice
little
alive?
framework that just popped in my head is too, like, my dad he's really into Edgar Cayce, and we would go to, or he would go to psychic conventions in, like, Las Vegas and visit the Edgar Cayce Institute, and he's always giving me, like, CDs, like, and recordings of all these different people, and he's really into the woo. And as a kid, I used to see my house is an old honeymoon hotel, and I have seen and heard things, and I've had like out of body experiences from a young age. Like, so actually, the first one that I vividly remember was listening to Deva Premal's Gayatri mantra in my like teenage bedroom.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I was literally like above my body and like, but
Wow,
under my bed. It was so interesting.
that's
And when I talked
wild.
to my mom about that, she had expressed that she's had that too. I think she kind of reined it in a bit, because it's
Mhm,
scary, right?
mhm,
And it's, like, not the norm. And
mhm.
as a kid, like, I could see things and I played in those realms a little bit. Um, and my dad was always, like, very much into the paranormal and all of that. So, kind of raised in, like, yeah, of course, that's real.
God, that's cool. Yeah.
Um And my and like to take he would take me to little psychic fairs and stuff too, and like get crystals and get little readings. I probably have a cassette tape somewhere in my parents' house of like a recording from a reading when I was little,
Wow, that would be
which would be
interesting to
really
listen to
interesting
again.
to revisit, right? I remember a couple things, but yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
and then it's
how
yeah,
yeah,
it's
so
but
then
kind
what
of
was the path?
yeah, go ahead.
Just thinking about, like, you've got this beautiful foundation, and it's kind of just part of your life. So then you entered into the wellness world, bringing these practices with you. Can you
Yeah.
talk walk us through, like, how have you maintained this kind of spiritual relationship, practice with yourself as you've built so many things?
Yeah, I have to say that it is the probably the only reason that I'm still standing as I am 10 and a half years in as a solo business owner. I did start with a partner in the first like year and a half, and we went our separate ways. I kept going with the business, and it was very just kind of random how we started. We had moved here from Belize, and I love like food. I had studied food as medicine because once I had that whole journey and had gone vegan, but then I was like, but look at the benefits of raw honey. And then, all of these and like just I'm constantly playing with food and diet. And I was always like helping friends and working at the co-op in Ithaca um and and then I was like, maybe I should like this could be a career. I'm really passionate about it. This could be a career. Maybe I could get paid for being a health coach, you know. So after I finished college studying like food as medicine and anthropology and English lit because I'm a huge book nerd and minored in still photography because I can't
Mhm.
choose. I could have
Yeah.
like you could have dropped anything in a hat and I'd probably be happy, or a lot of things,
Yeah.
and that's all woven in now because like I write, I
Mhm.
take photos, even though I have photographers who I work with for Super Fresh because there's just so much content to be created. I can't and don't want to do it all alone.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
like learning to release has been huge, but honestly, when we went our separate ways, like diving deeper into my spiritual practice was like a huge part that helped me strengthen because I was 23 when we started.
mm.
And it was just like we found this cool spot in this funky town we moved to from a Craigslist ad to like work trade on a farm off the grid for the summer. And all of a sudden we opened a business and I was 23. I had no idea what I was doing other than like I know how to cook good food. I know how to be nice to people and create nice space. I'd always like
Wow.
had potlucks in
Mm.
college, and I would tell my friends, like, this is the menu. If you want to bring ingredients, cool, and I'm going to cook it, but I already have it all planned. And or like bring something to drink, like some wine or whatever. Um, so
So
I knew
brave to
that.
go into business at 23. I'm just, like,
I
thinking about
think
that,
it
like, that's
was
awesome.
naivety and stupidity and a lot of passion.
Yes,
I
yes.
mean, there wasn't any place, especially at that time, where I could eat as like vegan, gluten-free, soy-free,
Mhm.
and or really hard to find.
So you, like, answered your own problem, like, you
All
created your own
organic. Yeah,
solution.
probably
I
not the
love that.
best way to do it. Like, um, yeah, I definitely I was my ideal client. Um, I was like, I have nowhere to eat. I guess I'll make
Yeah,
somewhere to eat. And
yeah. That
it
makes total
kind of
sense, though. Just by the
yeah.
way, I think about that a lot when I work with my clients. It's like we are like, the person we're serving is really ourselves, like, a year ago or 6 months ago or 5 minutes ago or 10 years ago, but it's like it's an element of us. That's
Oh,
exactly what you did.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, honestly, it's the passion that's a huge part of what's kept me going, and my practice,
Mm.
which has changed and evolved and is constantly, I hope, always changing and evolving, because it's like you said, I manage employees. There's a lot of, like, hiring and interviewing and praying that I can hire and interview and train and that they'll stay, and they're amazing, and it's a lot of work,
Yeah,
let alone all the back end, which I had no idea.
right.
Permits and taxes and any of it, you know?
Yeah,
I'd
there's
never,
so much work
firings.
to
I
do.
remember the first time I fired someone, I was crying on the floor of the basement at Superfresh, and it was just I felt so bad. It took me, like, 2 hours, like, trying to be nice and talking to them.
Oh, I
Yeah.
feel you, it's so hard. So what does your like, I'm thinking about, like, all of there's so much stuff that happens behind the scenes, and there's so
Mhm.
many hours of work that go into a business, especially one that looks like yours. Like, how are you maintaining, like, a grounded sense, like, a connection? Like, what does your practice look like nowadays?
Yeah, and I have to say, like, it's not like, every day. Sometimes
Yeah.
I'll go, like, 120 days where I'm doing the same, like, Kundalini meditation every day, and other practices woven around that,
Mhm.
that support me, and then I won't for a while. But
Yeah.
it's constantly in my practice of, like, I of even just, like, the daily intentions of waking up in the morning, and this is what I do to make my coffee, or if I'm not drinking coffee at the moment, make whatever my other elixir or juice is, and, get my diffuser going with my oils, and um, kind of just making sure I'm taking time in nature, taking time for myself. Um, but getting on the mat is always the best part, or like the most helpful part, or in nature,
Mhm,
because
mhm.
that's
And is that
really
meditation or yoga that you're doing on the mat?
um, meditation is more. I mean,
Mhm.
I always do some gentle like yoga flow movement just to kind of help my body in like wake up and sit,
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
not so stiff. Um, Definitely
I
getting
love
some
all of
movement
this,
in.
and I thank you so much for just sharing, like, your story and then, like, how it has kind of worked its way into where you are now, and then just how you are showing up for yourself and for your work. And when I find that, like, these practices, everything you're sharing, and just, like, just the simple act of showing up for yourself is, like, so profound, and
And it's
that
so hard to do.
it's what?
In the be it's for many, it's so hard to do
It's
because
so
we're the
hard to
last
do.
person we show up for.
Yeah, yeah, and that it can be so simple, and I know for myself, it's like the only way, especially in the last 10 years, the only way I have known kind of what my next step is because of my practice. It's not because of the work I'm doing on my computer
Yep,
and the social media or the specific one-to-one client work. It's like being on my mat.
yep.
It's creating art. It's breathing. It's being in nature. That's when I get the
Yes.
hits of
Yeah, when
like,
I go skiing, when I go for a walk, when you do those things.
yeah.
that's where it comes. And
That's where it
that's,
comes.
it's not like, oh, I have this problem. How do I sit down and try to figure it out and troubleshoot it?
Mm.
That's not where it comes. Is it important to do that? Yes, of course. But usually that's not where the true answer comes.
Yeah,
Like, it's when I walk away
100%.
from my computer, and tune in with my center and
Yeah.
turn off the distractions.
It's a total just remembering of yourself, and I wanna just go back to a point you just made a moment ago about, like, it's not every day, and I really want the listeners to hear this, that it doesn't need to be something you or it doesn't even need to be the same thing every day. It's just
Mhm.
showing up for yourself some
Yes.
way
And
consistently
that is
for
always constant.
that is constant.
That
Yeah.
part is constant, and if it's not, I don't make it long before I
Yeah.
get sick or I break my foot and then
Yeah.
the universe is like, yeah, you're gonna not walk for 4 months and you're gonna learn how to run a kitchen from your couch."
New challenge.
Yeah, and let go of, like, you're not gonna train a cook for the first time ever. You're not you're releasing even more reins and, like, the
Mm,
letting go, and as someone who's, like, likes to control and likes things a certain way and wants things to be a certain way for my customers and my community, um, but also finding, like, how to delegate and how to let go, and sometimes my brain is a little non sequitur, but I'm, like, circling back to this thought on the first couple years. We had a different location for our first year, and it had, like, an arts center and, um, wellness room and retail space, and it was, like, 5 businesses in one. It was crazy, and Super Fresh was a piece of that, and it was amazing and hard.
mhm,
And and it's I mean, it's amazing and hard still, but in a different way that feels more right and aligned. But even into the first year or so in on Main Street now in Superfresh, our current location, which we've been in for about 9.5 years. The first year or so, I it was it was so much. We didn't start with like a huge loan or anything. It was very like we had enough money to get everything up and running, buy the food, make the first payroll, and then like if we didn't have enough business, like it was just like kind of on a hope and a prayer. There was no massive funding. It was it and still is a complete passion project. And there has been a lot of help, to be honest, like from because I think it's so important to like not sugarcoat things or hide that of like I had a
yeah,
lot of help from family, I've had help from friends and like gap loans that that's been huge. Luckily a lot less these days.
that's
Um,
great.
but it still like can get tight at times, and being passionate about it is what keeps me going, and the community is what keeps me
Mhm,
going, and my practice. And but in the beginning, the first couple years I was so out of tune, and I was making myself sick, and I was breaking, and things were struggling so much more than they needed to be. But I didn't know that then. I thought I had to be constantly working on the business. If I wasn't sleeping, I had to be constantly doing
yeah,
something on the business or in the business, or the community would think I was a bad person, a bad business owner. My staff would think I don't care, was a bad business owner, et cetera, et cetera. And that
yeah,
everything would fall apart if I stepped away to go for a walk with a friend, to
yeah.
sit down on my yoga mat, to
What did
go
that
for a walk in
feel
the
like?
woods. What did it feel like when I felt like that? When I was in
Yeah,
that? Honestly, it felt like everything was always on fire and there were always problems, and I was always stressed out and super anxious, and everyone around me felt it.
yeah, that ripple
And
effect.
yeah, and then a friend said to me, cuz I think I said something like I feel like if I were to go and, you know, do any of those things, read a book, read a page of a book, go to a yoga class, have a drink with a friend, anything, have a cup of tea and not think about work,
Mhm,
um, that the house would burn down and
mhm,
everyone and everything I loved would be inside, and it's my fault.
mhm.
And then that person said to me, they're like, no, when you go do that, you're grabbing a bucket of water. And
Wow.
that has like that changed everything for me. And now I live with my ringer off. I mean, I'm not constantly checking my phone, honestly. The cafe is on like an emergency bypass. If something happened, it would ring. They know if they need to, if it's an emergency call from the landline, not their cell phones. um, so when they do, it's never an emergency. So when they do call from the landline, I'm like, what's wrong? Something's wrong. And it's never
Yeah.
really. 10 years in, and the more I would slow down and take care of myself in the morning, like the slower I was and the more intentional I was, the more I was able to get done.
Yeah.
The same fires may have still been presenting themselves, but I didn't see them as fires. And I was like, okay, cool, we can handle that. Okay, that's fixable. That's figure outable. All
Wow.
right. It was just like my whole energy changed most of the time. I will not, I like still have moments, as we all
Right.
do, because we're human and divine at once, trying to figure out how to be in this body in this time, in my
Mhm.
belief.
Oh, I'm right there with you. So you mentioned feeling like right and aligned. What does that feel like? How do you know when you're there?
Um, it's like a big wave of peace, and everything feels, I'm hesitant to use the word easy, but kind of like there's an easeful flow for me versus resistance and struggle and tension in my
Mm.
body, and like I'm fighting, and it's just, I know in my heart, even if it's not like I can't explain it, but if I get a ping, I follow it.
Mm. And would you just call that
And I know
intuition?
now what not to.
Yeah.
Like I know that like I have to listen to my gut even if I don't want to, whether it's with a person who I just interviewed and it's like, "Oh, but we really need someone." But it'd be better to wait for the right person than like not listen to my gut because it's never strayed me.
Right. So that's what you call your intuition is listening to your gut or that ping?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And sometimes I say things and I'm like, I could change my mind tomorrow. But currently that's my answer, yeah.
Yeah. So can you I love talking about this. Can you talk about how this role of intuition has shown up in your business? Like, how do you I feel like in our culture, we are taught to disassociate from our intuition in many ways and to cut ourselves off from it to appease other people, to meet the approval of other people. And it's like this relearning of like listening and tuning in. So how do you listen to it and listen to other people when you need to, but really like take in the information your body is giving you? And how do you apply that in your everyday work world?
That is a really good and really big question. I'm like processing because I know that I do it every day in every moment,
Yeah.
and how to explain it or try to find an example to give is a whole other
Mhm.
piece. Hmm. I mean, wow, I kind of am a little stuck of how to find
That's okay.
something to share on that,
How would
but I
you
know
just
it's there.
yeah, you know it's there. So you rely on your intuition every day as you go about
And a lot
your
of things I think are little, like, we built I'm constantly working on my trust muscles and
Mhm.
what that
Yeah.
means and how it feels and shifts. Um, and starting with the smaller, easy stuff helps versus like the huge, brambly, difficult things are a lot harder that we're especially the ones that we're more emotionally attached to.
Yeah, yeah, where it's
Um,
kinda harder to piece out all of the different feelings about it.
yeah, I mean, I definitely using it when I hire is huge. Um, like that's definitely one way that shows up a lot. Um, I'm trying to think and it's not coming
That's
to me.
okay. That's
Maybe
okay.
it will come as we keep talking.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to ask you about was that something that a lot of women that I talk with experience is just wanting to do something, like develop a passion, just like you
Mhm.
have. And they have this desire and it's so strong. And then they go, who am I to do this? Like, I don't have the skills. I don't have the certification. I haven't gone to school for that.
Yep.
And then they retreat in some way so that they're not actually moving forward towards their thing, but they're like, "Oh, I think I'll stay where I am a little bit longer, or I can't do that yet." Like, have you experienced that?
Every day.
Y Yeah. How do you deal with
Uh,
it?
I'm like, but also, like, it's never outweighed, well, I don't wanna say no, it has, but, you know, I've done a lot of things scared or kind of blind, like, I didn't know what it meant to own a restaurant, but I
Yeah, well,
just, like,
well,
I kinda did it and figured it out. I didn't have a business plan at our first location, and the second location we did, but, like, I don't really know if it was that helpful, even though I find coming back to missions and vision statements and, like, quarterly goals or or annual goals really helpful, and but also it's in alignment with what is my personal North Star. What do I want for
mm,
my life? What do I want my life to look like 1 year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when I'm retired, and how is what I'm doing supporting that? And for
and
me
how is that?
like, for me, like I said earlier of, like, how I have woven in, like, I wear all these hats, and it doesn't feel like it to me because my personality and my passions, I want to travel and constantly learn and read and write and take photos and learn other cultures' foods and medicines, and, like, these are just all passions of mine. I love having the restaurant and serving the community, and I love doing events and seeing people and, like, being able to go to live music and hang out backstage with musicians when I'm running hospitality, and, like, I've kind of, like, built it so it, like, feeds all aspects of my
Mhm,
passions,
mhm,
um, which can sometimes be really hard because it can get scattering and overwhelming, so I
mhm.
have to rein it in and focus and be like, "No, this is the project right now." I say that, and I usually have always have more than one project going, um but in terms of the whole, like, comparing ourselves or who am I to do this? I mean, I have a cookbook and it's sold over 20,000 copies internationally so
Wow.
far. Yeah, I just kind of realized that a couple months ago when I was going over reports, and was like, "Oh, shit."
That's awesome.
Yeah, um, and which is not bad for a, like, small town author, like,
Oh my god, it's
first
incredible.
publication, and I have been, like, I have many different books in, like, Google Doc drafts, different folders and table of contents and all this stuff, and I'm focused on getting super freshes, staffing and certain things. We're wholesaling bread right now to some spots locally, but we're not gonna take it any further until we have more bakers trained up, and we're not expanding our cafe hours so we can focus on that, and we're doing, like, catering and festivals and weddings, a little bit more, but I'm like, 1 a month is plenty, like
Yeah,
May through October, because I also wanna lead retreats, and I also wanna teach classes, and I wanna travel, and so and I'm like, how do I balance it with my life instead of, like, we used to be 7 days a week with 17 employees, um,
yeah.
on average, and I probably won't go back to that until I'm a New York Times bestselling author and can afford a manager who does what I do and pay them
That will
really,
happen.
really well,
Mhm.
um, and yeah, so but, like, I have definitely had that come up in terms of, like, my next book. I'm like, "Well, who am I to write, like, this book of,
Yeah.
like, or I need to be at this place." I actually have one that I hesitate to share some things until they're, like, ready, but there is one that's not necessarily food, but it's kind of like business, spiritual life stuff, um, lessons and stories because there's so much basically what we're talking about right now in a
Uh-huh.
book form,
Oh,
and
that'd be
I'm
great.
like, "Well, who am I? I'm not a success yet." But then, like, what does success even mean?
Yeah.
Like, I've been
Well,
in
I
business
love it.
for 10 and a half years.
Yeah,
Like,
you've
I
got
am
all
an
this.
author.
Yeah,
I
you've
I
gone through
lead
that
retreats
process.
internationally, like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think
Well,
the
I love what
definition of
you're
success is
saying
so interesting.
about say that again, I'm sorry, I
I
interrupted
think
you.
the definition of success is so interesting, and it's different for every person, and it changes, and we don't give ourselves enough credit. We're constantly just, like, beating ourselves up, like I said in the beginning of,
Mhm.
and I think in that comparison or like, well, it's not, I'm not good enough, or it's not at the level, like, you're comparing it to what you know. Like, for me, I compare myself to my expectations of my own self and others, of course. But I'm like, "Oh, that could have been better."
Yeah.
At the
Well, I think
same
that's good.
time, I've released a lot of that. The book would have never gone to publish if it weren't for editors and a publisher, because there's definitely photos and a couple typos I've found after the fact. Photos I don't like, and we kept trying to reshoot, and I was like, "Just send it. We have to just send it to print because there's a deadline."
Right.
So, I'm
Got it
letting it
done
go, and
and
will I ever
perfect.
fix it? I don't know. I just wanna write other books.
Yeah, totally. Well, I really appreciate the imperfection and just allowing it to just be what it is, by the way, and I just really love how you answered that because what I heard in that was that your passion is so strong that that's what's driving you forward. And so when that question or that feeling of self-doubt, it's like it only lingers so long in your mind because it's like, no, this is what I'm really passionate about. This is what I really want to do. I'm going to drive forward with this. This really matters. And when you talked about it being your North Star, it's like if I don't do this thing, then I'm not following this, North Star,
Well,
right?
how it can support me get it, like, I don't know if it is my North Star, but it is a component. Because, like, I also want a family, and I want, like, my life to look a certain way. Like, I want to travel, I wanna be able to take time off, I wanna, like, do things, but, like, how I'm already weaving that into my life, even if it's, like, at a smaller component right now.
Mhm.
I was just able to spend 2 weeks in Italy with some really great friends. I was very fortunate to have free places to stay with them, and I met them because they played at my restaurant 6 years ago, this Italian bluegrass
Wow.
band, and
How
then we
cool.
became instant friends. I've been there twice and then stayed with them, and they've stayed at my house, and yeah. So I just feel like the more you lean into that, like, and follow your heart and follow the joy, like, the path shows up and
Mhm.
you will be led. And that's a huge belief of mine. And oh, there was something I was going to say on all of this, but we'll see if it comes up
I
again.
love that. The path shows up. I just wrote that down. I love that because it's so true when you just start taking one step forward. And I always think that, like, your passion is here for a reason. It's just kind of like your gift, what you're here to do. So if it keeps coming up and it keeps showing up, like, you just gotta keep going with it, keep following it,
Yes.
and, like, the
That is,
alignment
yes,
what? The
what
alignment
the
will
world
be
needs.
there. Hmm?
It's what the world needs.
It's what the world needs, yeah.
And
It's like you're
that's what I was just thinking of saying too. When I get in my way like that, because it's us getting in our own way, right?
Mhm.
When we have these thoughts of who am I?
Yeah.
And it's all these deeper layers of, like, and then you can dive into, like, shadow work and work on your inner child and our defense mechanisms and all of this work. I'm actually going on a nature quest this weekend as a part of a 3-year program I'm in Ithaca, New York. It's the end of our
Oh,
2
cool.
years. We meet 5 weekends a year, and we dive into the shadow, the inner critic, the inner child, and we work through it somatically with meditation, psychology, all these different tools, and it's the same group of people, and it's so powerful. And if we don't do that work, we'll never grow. And when I get in my own way like that, another thing that I forget who told me this a few years ago, shared is, I who am I to, like, judge what someone needs? And,
Mhm.
like, I just need to show up and share. And saying this out loud right now is a reminder to myself to show up even more, and, like, someone out there is, like, waiting to hear your exact voice. to hear
Mm.
someone else is doing it, but it hasn't hit their hearts. It hasn't like pulled them. Like whatever, however you share your voice, your story is going to hit someone in a way. And by me hiding because I'm scared, by me hiding because I'm nervous to talk about this, or I don't think I know enough yet, and I want more certifications and more accolades because I want to prove that I'm good enough to, or like certified enough, or have a master's degree or a PhD or whatever it is. Someone out there is praying for what you already know to share.
Mhm.
And they like, I'm, I'm doing a disservice. I'm being
Yes.
selfish by, and that I think comes a lot into the sales world of what, of the aspect of this. And I think the restaurant piece, it's easier to sell things because it's a restaurant. People buy food, they eat food. It feels like a very nice equal exchange. Although anytime I raise my prices, I have a mini panic attack, but I want to stay in business and I have to. And I want to pay my people well as I can in a restaurant. And, but in terms of like selling retreats or workshops or like services that aren't as like food for money or
Yeah, yeah.
something as direct, I think we all get in the like, oh, I don't want to sell. But like, if you don't, somebody wants to buy what you have.
That's the
And
thing,
I have to
somebody wants to
constantly
buy.
remind myself of that because
Yeah.
I'm like sharing health coaching and private cooking classes now. And those are higher ticket items because I don't have a lot of one-on-one time on my schedule. And I have
Mhm.
16 years of experience and knowledge. And it's harder to sell that, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I love that because somebody is looking for what like the very thing that you're offering, and if they connect with you, they and the thing is the connecting with you is like an energetic resonating quality. It's not they aren't connecting with you because you went to school here and you had this many years of experience. It's because
No.
the way they feel when they're around you and
Yeah,
they
they don't
want
really care about
more
any of
of that. Right. And people want to pay for like the thing that they want, right? Like it's
that.
exciting and it's fun to be like, I'm buying myself this thing.
And who am I
And
to judge what they can afford too? I don't know.
right. Yeah.
And I have paid for things and like I've basically lived below the poverty line my whole like honestly still. I do this all from like and I'm working on changing that and it's getting better. But like I've worked from a very low financial place. But and I've been so abundant because I get to do massage trades with people who love to eat my food and I eat really good food at my restaurants. Like there's ways that I'm like compensated in ways that aren't as linear of black and white. Um,
Mhm.
but so I've like built that in too. um, and or like go to festivals because I'm working them and making money
Yeah.
there or things like that. I kind of find like, oh, I'm going to go on a retreat to Italy and lead it so I can pay for my trip to Italy.
Oh, I love the creativity and the resourcefulness. I think that's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't know where I was going with that or how that started, but yeah.
Well, I really just love this whole line of thinking around just giving yourself fully to whatever is calling you and follow and let the path will show up. I just want that on written on my wall, the path or the path shows up. I think that's beautiful. And I think you've really demonstrated that so well in like everything you've done. And thank you for walking us through like where you started, as a kid and what life looked like for you and the things that were present and the things that were important and what life looks like for you now. And there's just this beautiful thread of connection and being really receptive throughout
Mhm.
your life. And it's like the you're able to show up for your work in the way that you are because of the connection that you have and because you're willing to receive guidance and because you're willing to do the work.
Yeah.
So
The
thank you for
more
sharing that
I
with us.
slow down, the more I show up for myself and tune in and keep doing the work on myself, the more I'm able to come back and give. And like this program I've been doing, it's been really hard to commit to 5 weekends a year. And but I every time I'm there, I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna come back. So I like thank goddess I showed up because I'm gonna come back so refreshed and I'm such a better like business owner and human and friend and family member and all, person. um because I'm actually addressing all these wounds that show up in all of us, however big or small.
Yeah.
And I can show up better for myself and be better of service when I take care of myself. Putting your own mask on first is huge. And honestly, another big thing I just want to leave too that has been critical is finding the right group of people to surround myself with. I would not be
Yes.
standing still if I wasn't friends with other business owners. If I of any kind, doesn't have to be restaurant, it can be retail, it can be coaches and people who are also on that path. And
Can
like
we just say just one moment there? How did you find these people? Because that's something that comes up a lot. How did you connect?
I
How
think
did you draw these people towards you?
part of it was the type of business I had. I'm part of the downtown Brattleboro business group. So I became friends with some store owners, and they're still good friends who will maybe, I mean, we might end up going to dinner like once a year or something, or for a walk. Some of them have been coaches who became a coach because I they were a customer and I always loved what they did. And now she's one of my best friends. I've been on retreats with her to Mexico, and I don't work one on one with her as much, other than when I have a big project or something I want to troubleshoot. And actually, we're going for a walk after this call. But it's great to have people in your circle who they're also following their light and their hearts and finding their way, even if they have a 9 to 5 job and have a side hustle and are kind of figuring that out. But I try to, like, a lot of my closest friends are people who are like a little bit ahead of the path than me, or we're all kind of on our own similar paths. Um, and so part how I found them, Deshay is the coach I'm talking about and has been a huge impact for me, and is such a good friend. And it's interesting. She had offered this group when she had first left and started her practice. She was offering like a group mastermind, and you could do a VIP package if you wanted to work one on one with her in addition to the group calls. And I was like, well, I can't afford any of that, but I know she's a customer. And I was like, well, I'm not gonna. It was like my first, like less than my first year in business, maybe 8 months in. And I just was like, I need to ask. And I wrote to her, and we were like kind of barely knew each other, just as like customer client. Like I catered her first book opening, and um, I was like, I don't know if this is a possibility, but I'm wondering if you might be open to some kind of like partial or trade for food credit at Superfresh. I know you love our food in exchange for this group. I just feel like I have to be in it. I have to figure out how to be in this group. And then she's like, oh my God, I've been praying for a personal chef because I hate cooking. And I love your food. And my husband loves your food. And like obviously it wasn't like a personal chef, but she could order from my restaurant 7 days a week whenever she wanted. So she's like, do you want the VIP package? And then we started
Oh
working
my
together one
god.
on one because of that, in full trade.
That's
So if I hadn't
fantastic.
asked and just been
Yeah.
vulnerable, and like she could have said no, but she wanted that too, and it was worth it for her too. And
Oh, I
like
love
that's
that.
how we started working together. Um
I love that story so much
Like,
because
she
it's
was
like
literally praying for, like, some,
yeah.
and it comes up in ways that you don't imagine, right? It comes up, you pray, but you stay open, because what's that gonna look
Mhm.
like?
Right, and I'm thinking too as you're saying that, it's like, you're not naming what the outcome is, you're just, like, saying to the universe, like, "I want this thing, like, I need help getting to this thing, I don't know how it's gonna happen, but if you can give me help," and then the answer comes however it comes.
Yeah, and if not this, something better, because
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know exactly what it's supposed to look like. I would like it to look this way, but I'm open to it being a little different. And she's also
Mhm.
the person who introduced me to my publisher.
God, I love those
So,
connections, the
like, it
synchronicity in
rippled
that.
in so many ways.
Yes. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks for expanding on that, I think that's really helpful, and,
But
I
I think
know
going out
that
and networking, if you are like
yeah.
if you have a service-based, like, one-on-one and you work from home, I think going out, like, whether it's just going to yoga classes or going whatever your passions are, if it's like a knitting group or a Spanish class in town or a Zoom group, it doesn't even have to be in person. whatever works for your lifestyle, your personality,
Mhm.
find ways to meet other people and put yourself out of
Right.
your comfort zone and ask them to tea, like, or coffee or a drink or for a walk. And it's huge. I would not, so many times I've ended up crying in the back room at Boomerang in the beginning years. And but it was someone who could relate and be like, "Oh my god, I've had similar things with staffing too," you know,
Yeah. Oh,
and
that's
being
so important.
friends.
I know I have a friend that I met in a Facebook group. We've never actually met in
Yeah,
person, but we just connected and we've done Zoom calls together, and I just really like her, and we just chat, and we
yeah,
chat about business and stuff, and it's just been really fun.
yeah. And it
I
can
think
be
it's so
just one
important.
person if that's all you've got, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's really just nice to it's just nice to know that you can meet people in multiple ways.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jess. It's just been an honor to have you here. Is there anything like last minute stuff you want to share? Anything you want to leave us with?
I think we covered a lot of ground, and I think to end and wrap things up today, I mean, again, thank you so much for having me, and I just I just would love to see more people sharing their light and their gifts because I truly believe that that's what we need and that's what can heal. And the more that more of us do that, it gives permission for others to do the same. And like the more we shine our light, the more others are like, oh, I can do that too.
Yes.
I have permission too. If they're doing that, like, oh, if she can do that, I can do that. Like, yeah, you
100% I
can.
agree.
You
Yeah.
can probably do it better than me. Well,
I
but it's
love
gonna
that
be
so much.
different, like, we're all
Yeah.
different, it's not even a comparison, it's like you're gonna bring your own magic to it. It's never the same.
It's never the
We're
same. You're
our
gonna bring
own
your own
blueprints, and
uniqueness.
we
Yeah.
need to do that, and if that means that you are an electrician because that's what you love doing, and, like, that's your light, then please, because we do need electricians. It doesn't have to be like, "I'm gonna, like, be a globe set it like, jet trotting," it's all
Yeah.
glamorous, but, like, what is your passion? I feel like
Whatever calls to your heart.
yeah, it's
Exactly.
like pet grooming and, like, I know people who like that. It's their joy and their passion,
Mhm.
and just whatever that is, and you can weave in so many ways. You can weave it
Mhm.
in.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. And how can people connect with you?
Yeah, so my restaurant is in Brattleboro, Vermont, so that is superfreshcafe.com or can find us on Instagram at superfreshcafe. And then my personal is Jessica Jean Weston, JeanWeston.com. And same thing for Instagram, Jessica Jean Weston. I have a YouTube channel that's small but growing. Um, and yeah, I teach classes virtually in person. I lead retreats. I'll have some retreats coming up this fall here in Vermont, one day and weekend, as well as one coming up in Sardinia, Italy next spring.
Whoa, very
So,
exciting.
yes, I'm so excited.
Oh, that's
It's
so
gonna
fun.
all be about, like, slowing down, tuning in with the natural rhythms of the world, cooking, eating good food, meditation, dolce far niente, like, the sweetness of doing nothing, but while eating and basking in good food, amazing location, and it's in a blue zone, which is, that there's,
Nice.
like, 5 blue zones in the world, Sardinia, Japan, um, somewhere in California, and a couple I think one's in maybe Costa Rica. I forget the other one. And they are where the most people live past age 100.
Oh my god, this sounds
Yeah.
incredible. Oh, I
Yeah.
wanna learn more about it.
Yes. I'll be getting those details out, I think by June is the goal.
Okay,
So we'll be
cool.
sharing that. So yeah, just follow me online and I have lots of information and free ebooks and my cookbooks on my website and things like that.
Great. Thank you so much, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Amanda.